Last night, I began a three-part conversation with God. You may view it if you missed it in the Cold Nidre service, which is on the archive, on oramilive.com. In part one, which I call God and the Hula Hoops, I used hula hoops to illuminate different ideas about God. Thanks to Michael Kaplan and Graham Becker for these pictures. I thought it was a pretty unique, creative teaching. You know, it took me 57 years to master this message. Then this kid masters the message in 3 minutes. 2.5 years old. Pretty awesome, huh? By the way, I bat mitzvahed his mother, married his aunt, converted his uncle, sat with the family at the deaths of his great-great-grandparents. And 2.5 years ago, I got to name him, and recently his brother. Those are the deep relationships that make being a rabbi, a cantor, so powerful. And that's what long-term partnership in a synagogue really gets you. So in the second conversation we had last night, I had it out with God, using some choice language to demand that God ask forgiveness for the mess God had made of our world. But instead of an apology, I got something else. If you haven't seen it, check it out. So now I'm going to go one step higher. Last night I talked to God. This morning, I'm talking to Mark. Does faith make it easier for you to deal with all this loss? Does faith make it easier for you, Rabbi, to deal with all this loss? So asked Mark, with whom I have been very close for a few decades. In addition to all the B'nai Mitzvah and the baby namings and the weddings, we have been together through life changes and economic downturns, through illness and loss in hospital rooms and in funeral homes. I was with his family when his mother passed away. After his mother passed away, he came to my home after my dad died. With all you have seen, Mark seemed to be asking, with all the death and tragedies, the cancer and the Alzheimer's, the young people taken before their time, the old people suffering well after their time, do you have a faith that gets you through? I confess that Mark's question caught me off guard. Beyond all of this time's benevolent blessings and sweet silver linings, these have been 2 or so of the toughest years, facing one painful tragedy after another. That mass shooting nearby the synagogue, the raging wildfires that placed more than 85% of our congregation under mandatory evacuation, the deaths first of my mother-in-law, Terry, followed by, soon thereafter, by the death of my dad, Ken, and recently my mother-mom, burying the first known Jewish COVID patient in LA, who was also a friend. And then during the height of Los Angeles' COVID surge, supporting the families of 16 people who died in a single month. Too much tragedy. Too much illness, too much anxiety and pressure and depression, too much, just too much. And I know I'm not alone. We've talked, I know so many of you have been struggling to maintain equilibrium, trying to find joy amidst the jumbled journey of life, to dodge that depression that threatens to overwhelm, to maintain a sense of meaning amidst it all. I always wonder, how do you get through? When Mark asked me, does my faith get me through? I paused. I have spent so much time ministering to others or attending to my own words that I often forgot to factor in my own faith. How did I get through? There were mornings that, like many of you, I woke so tired that I didn't know how I'd get out of bed. There were afternoons that my attitude was such that tears flowed freely at the sadness of it all. There were evenings when the weight of the burdens we are facing made me wonder where I would find the wisdom to bring us back to blessing and into relief. Yet somehow, the next day, I found my feet still under me and supporting me as I rose up to reach out and navigate another day. Where does that strength come from? How could I continually put one foot in front of the other one day at a time when I felt less charged than a teen's cell phone after a day of connecting with others? It's my faith. That's where I find holiness in the Holy One, guiding me, sending my spouse and friends to me at just the right moment to hold me, to strengthen me. That is why when, under the guise of my spiritual director and therapist, God grants me insight and wisdom, energy and equilibrium to be self-aware and self-compassionate. That's when my partner clergy come forth like flight attendants on the jetway that's my life to remind me to, what? Put on my oxygen mask first. And because the Holy One is in everything and in everyone, identifying those supports, setting them up, and allowing them to help me are acts of faith in and of themselves. During a particularly difficult period in my journey, Rabbi Julia Weiss reminded me that what I was going through was akin to trying to stay standing on a board in the middle of the ocean. Waves of sadness or despair or mourning kept coming. I couldn't stop them or even anticipate them. I couldn't turn around to look at them because when I did, I lost my equilibrium and fell. So my task, she taught me, was to just continue facing forward and ride the waves. Sometimes those waves were small and I could handle them with ease. Sometimes they washed over me with a vengeance that threw me into the ocean. Then my faith helped me get back up on that board, knowing that the cold water need not stop me because feeling drenched was an indication that I was alive. Climbing back on that board again and again, that's my faith. It's my faith that let me face forward while both embracing and letting go of what's behind me and still coming toward me. Somehow, I sense that I would make it through. That's my faith. Rock solid faith that I am not alone, that during my life's work, whether it's the sacred work of the rabbinate or the sacred stuff of being a spouse, a partner, a father, or a friend, or in the sense that self-care is sacred too. I believe I would float above the floodwaters and through the eye of the storm. Because like our patriarch Jacob experienced in the middle of the wilderness, beside that sulam, that ladder that went up to the heavens, Achen yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh, holiness is alive in this place. Yes, goodness and godliness are here with us too. And so I dance with Miriam and the women, taking up my timbrel as we waltz along those walls of water that simultaneously seem so threatening and so reassuring. I sing, Micha mocha ba'ilim Adonai, who is like you, O source of strength. I found faith in Hamakom, that there is no place without the presence, the holy presence, no place where I was alone. So I jumped forward with Joshua and Caleb when they were coming out of their mission to scout out the promised land, convinced that some challenges were gigantic and that I would feel significantly ant-like before them. Yet a pathway through the wilderness would open up and I would always be able to wander forward toward Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, the promise of a fruitful existence that will sustain me, an existence as nourishing as mother's milk, a sweetness as sweet as honey on my tongue. Amidst mind-blowing misery or the daily rebalancing to exact equilibrium from this existence, I have held fast to that faith. It calls me to count my blessings still, to let go of the small stuff, in other words, to jettison the jetsam so I can float forward. It reminds me, as I try to remind you, to give thanks regularly, shehachianu, for each new moment, whether of pleasure or of pain, or a uniquely novel intermix of the two. For we are alive, for we are loved, for we are surrounded by the soul of souls, the source of all existence, Elohai, my God, our God. So yes, Mark, I have a faith that does get me through. And I hope you do too. And I would love to hear from you, or any of you, about your faith, about how you seek ways to strengthen it during challenging times. Or if you are struggling with faith or have struggled with faith, know that I am always here too for you, for fascinating faith conversations, to figure out how to find it or how to get through. Let's all strive to find a faith to sustain us, that we can pass down with our most cherished of Jewish values. Let's pass them down the door of a door, from generation to generation. Amen.